exciting. Yes.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to our Kaua'i Stamp Our Story event honoring the first day of issue of the new USPS Go for Broke stamp. My name is Faith Shiramizu and I will be your MC today. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can, please stand. Thank you. We would like to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy day to be here with us, especially our distinguished speakers, Mayor Derek Kawakami, State Representative Nadine Nakamura, and Military Intelligence Service Veteran Norman Hashisaka. The Go for Broke stamp campaign began 15 years ago with 3 Nisei women, Cheese Ohida, Fusa Takahashi, and Aiko King. They felt the accomplishments of the Nisei soldiers of World War II, a group which included the husbands of Chiz and Fusa, should be recognized and celebrated, and a postage stamp seemed like a perfect way to do this. Over a 15-year period, they petitioned many politicians and community leaders. They were joined by Wayne Osako, who is now the co-chairperson of the campaign. They were notified in November 2020 that their dream would become a reality. The stamp image has a special Hawaii connection. The artwork is based on a photograph of Wa'ii Yamamoto, a soldier from Linole on Hawaii Island. The photo was taken at a train station in France in 1944 and was found in the archives of the Hawaii Nisei project. Due to the current pandemic, the official national unveiling of the postage stamp happened at a small private event in Los Angeles yesterday. The U.S. Postal Service released an official unveiling video, which we will watch right now.
Thank you for joining us as we honor the bravery and sacrifice of Japanese American soldiers during World War II. More than 33,000 Nisei, or second-generation Japanese Americans, U.S. citizens by birth, fought for the nation. The Nisei served as interpreters and gathered intelligence in the Pacific, flew in glider planes behind German lines, they built bridges, and they defused mines under enemy fire in Italy. They especially distinguished themselves in a segregated unit of ground troops, the 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, whose motto was, "Go for broke," a slang term that means all in, to risk everything, to make an all-out effort to win.
Well, it's hard in a short time to capture the impact on the Japanese American community. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, they suffered suspicion, distrust, and of course, upwards of 120,000 were incarcerated in camps, in 10 camps scattered throughout the interior of the U.S. And the call went out for volunteers to the camps. Imagine being behind barbed wire, because your country said you can't be trusted. And they said, oh, by the way, we would like you to volunteer and fight and possibly die to defend the country that's put you and your family behind wire. Over 1,100 volunteered from the camps to do that. It's an incredible story.
The soldiers, especially the ones from Hawaii, were very dedicated, and they wanted to make sure that their actions would serve them well and would also serve the community in gaining a better stature on the island back home. They wanted to be seen as citizens. They wanted their offspring to have better opportunities for them in their vocations and professions. They wanted to be seen as true Americans, just like anybody else.
Part of is fighting for the USA, and another part of it is to show that we were loyal to the USA. And at that particular time, the propaganda against Japanese was very, very severe, and we were painted with the same brush. You know, Japanese Americans were, even though they didn't recognize we had American hearts, they looked at our face and said, "Oh, you're part of the imperial forces." So anyway, it took a while for the U.S. government to recognize that we should be allowed to participate in the war.
They lived up to their motto with legendary acts of bravery and heroism to become among the most decorated units in U.S. military history at the time. In total, Japanese American soldiers in World War II were awarded more than 18,000 medals, ranging from Bronze Stars, the Purple Hearts, the Silver Stars, to Distinguished Service Crosses and the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor. Collectively, they earned 8 presidential unit citations.
They went to North Africa, then to Italy, and their fighting in Italy was legendary, captured perhaps at the Battle Casino, where the newspaper, the correspondents called them the Little Men of Iron and nicknamed them the Purple Heart Battalion because of their incredible bravery and sacrifice in trying to seize Casino.
I want to highlight Private Sadeo S. Munamori for his heroic actions. Munamori was posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, the only one awarded to a Nisei in the immediate aftermath of World War II. While serving in the 442nd in Italy, during the assault on the Gothic Line on the morning of April 5th, 1945, he found himself in charge of a squad after his squad leader fell wounded. Pinned down with 2 other soldiers in a shell crater by machine gun fire and grenades, Munamori crawled out, knocked out the enemy machine gun nest with grenades. Scrambling back to the crater, another grenade bounced off his helmet and fell into the crater. He smothered it with his body, and he was killed instantly. The other 2 men suffered concussions and partial deafness, but they survived thanks to Private Sadeo Munamori, who represented the highest standards of leadership and bravery under fire, a true Nisei.
After the war, of course, we came back with the colors of the 442nd, and we paraded in front of President Truman, where he gave his famous talk about fighting the enemy overseas and at home.
You know, most people are going to look at this stamp and see a group of soldiers and say, you know, what's so relevant about this 75-year-old Nisei veteran story? But to me, it's really not about the length of time or that this is a moment in history. It's really an example about what America represents. And what's so unique about our country is that we are a country of immigrants. So everyone can relate to this story. So this stamp really represents what it means to be an American. It's about overcoming these obstacles and discrimination, and in the end, persevering and living that American dream.
It should remind us of what a group of men, what they paid for the price of citizenship, that we take for granted, but they reaffirmed it, in many respects bought it with their blood and sacrifice.
This meritorious stamp is available now at post offices nationwide. You can also have them delivered to your home or office by going to USPS.com. We're proud to dedicate the Go for Growth Japanese American soldiers of World War II forever stand.
So, the State of Hawaii celebration occurred just 1 hour ago today in Honolulu and was also a small private affair just like ours. And we'll be watching the address of Governor David Ige and the unveiling countdown from today's event.
Thank you, Ms. Veach. We are honored to have Governor David Ige and First Lady Dawn Ige with us here this morning. Governor Ige was an early supporter of the Go for Broke Soldier Stamp, and he and the First Lady each have a very personal connection to the Nisei soldier story. Governor, Mrs. Ige.
Good morning and aloha, everyone. Governor Ige and I are deeply honored to join the Nisei veteran community to celebrate this milestone in our history. Both our fathers served in the 100th and 442nd Battalion, so we have a deep personal connection to this day and to the Go for Broke Soldier Stamp. I don't believe our fathers nor the many Nisei veterans would have dreamed that one day they would be honored and recognized on a U.S. postage stamp, because many, like my father, spoke very little about the war and their efforts. In fact, I'm just learning about his experiences now, and I've learned so much just by coming here to the Club 100 Clubhouse. I've learned that these men believed it was their duty to serve their country. So it is moments like these that allow us to take the time to honor and appreciate the contributions of the World War II Nisei soldiers. Mahalo.
Aloha. The stamp itself has a special connection to Hawaii. The original 100th Battalion was comprised entirely of Hawaii Nisei soldiers. And as you know, many other Hawaii Nisei went on to serve in the 442nd Regimental Combat Team and the Military Intelligence Service. In addition, the 1399th Engineered Construction Battalion was an all Japanese American non-combat unit that served here on Oahu. But let's go back. Our story begins more than 100 years ago when our grandparents immigrated from Japan and Okinawa to Hawaii to work in the sugar plantations for pennies a day to seek a better life for their families. It continued when the bombs fell on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, and many people in our country questioned their loyalty. Tens of thousands here in Hawaii and across the country volunteered for the opportunity to prove their loyalty to the country of their birth. At the end of the war, President Harry Truman said, "Americanism is not a matter of race or creed. It is a matter of heart. You fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you have won. Keep up the fight, and we will continue to win to make this great republic stand for just what the Constitution says it stands for: the welfare of all the people, all the time." When these soldiers returned to Hawaii, they continued their lives of service and helped to shape the future of our state and our nation's efforts to create that more perfect union that our founding fathers envisioned. They learned that when we work together, we can do great things. We elected the first Japanese American, Filipino American, and Native Hawaiian governors in the history of our country. We elected the first Japanese American male, Chinese American male, the first Japanese American woman, and Native Hawaiian to the US Congress of this country. I stand here as your governor, the first governor of Okinawan descent to serve in this country, based on the sacrifices and the go for broke spirit of the Nisei men and women who served in our military during World War II. I stand on the shoulders of giants, of the most dedicated and committed, the greatest generation of this country. It is in their honor that I present this proclamation today to the Nisei veteran community and ask all Hawaii residents to join me in recognizing this day as Go for Broke Soldiers Day in the state of Hawaii. And I really want to thank the Stamp Our Story campaign founders who persevered to make this stamp a reality. Thank you to the Hawaii Stamp Organizing Committee for coordinating today's event and inviting us to be part of the Go for Broke Soldiers U.S. Postage Stamp unveiling ceremony. And I really wanted to thank the U.S. Postal Service for honoring the legacy of the Nisei soldiers. The most importantly, I want to thank all of you and the Nisei soldiers who gave it their all in their sacrifice to our state, our country, and the world. Their legacy truly inspires all of us each and every day. Aloha and mahalo.
All right, so everyone join in for the countdown, starting at 5. With me. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So exciting. Oops, sorry. Beyond muffled. All right, now we will begin our County of Kauai commemoration. I would like to introduce and invite up to the podium the first of our speakers, Representative Nadine Nakamura.
Thank you. I want to thank the United States Postal Service, the founders of the Go for Broke Soldier Stamp, and our dynamic duo, Carolyn Morinishi and Faith Shiramizu, and all the volunteers who put today's event on Kauai together. As we all know, on the morning of December 7th, 1941, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And my mother, who was asleep that night, learned the next morning that her guardian, who was a Tendikyo minister, was taken away in the middle of the night by the United States government. and he spent 4 years in an internment camp in New Mexico. In spite of this, my uncle Roy Suga joined the Army, and he served as an interpreter in the Military Intelligence Service. Altogether, 18,000 Nisei served in World War II, and 800 were killed in the line of duty. And this stamp honors their spirit to our country, the amazing courage and sacrifice. And even while some of their own family members were incarcerated, they proved their patriotism to the entire nation. As a sansei, and for my yonsei children, we are the beneficiaries of the Nisei's loyalty to our country. This stamp and the heroism of the 442nd Regiment Team and 100th Battalion reminds us to carry on this legacy, to have courage in the face of adversity, to never give up, to preserve our fragile democracy and the liberties that they fought and died for. So I thank you for the honor of being here today, and I'd like to introduce my daughter, who is serving in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to say a few words.
Hello, I'm First Lieutenant Nadine Nakamura. My decision to join the Army was largely informed by a history of service in my family and my identity as a Japanese American. In World War II, my grandfather, Henry Nakamura, served as a linguist in the Pacific Theater. Major General Charles Willoughby said that Japanese American linguists shortened the Pacific War by 2 years and saved possibly 1 million American lives. Henry's brother, Ed, served in the 442nd Infantry Regiment. The regiment, segregated at the time, is the most decorated unit of its size in the Army's history, earning more than 18,000 awards over a 2-year period. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, more than 112,000 men, women, and children of Japanese ancestry, more than 70,000 of which were U.S. citizens, were evicted from their homes and held in relocation camps and other confinement sites. Like 30,000 other Japanese Americans, my grandfather was not required to serve due to his status as an alien enemy, but did so in order to prove that his ethnicity had no bearing on his loyalty to the United States. Most Japanese Americans, especially those born in the U.S., consider themselves loyal to the United States of America. No Japanese American citizen or Japanese national residing in the United States during World War II was ever found guilty of sabotage or espionage. As a POW, Stanley Akita, a Japanese American soldier, was asked by a Nazi officer if he felt like an American. After replying yes, his captor asked him if he knew that a cat born in the fish market isn't a fish. Akita said yes, but the cat belongs to the fish market. Those Japanese Americans who chose to serve then are a part of our collective Army and U.S. history. My grandfather chose to defend his country and fight the oppression of others, even while he and his community faced oppression themselves. As a leader, I work to never dishonor the sacrifices and legacy of the Japanese American soldiers who came before me. Like them, I choose to serve my country.
Oh, chicken skin, yeah. So now we would like to call Jan Ishibashi to join us up here to receive, or representing the West Side Club 100.
And on behalf of the legislative delegation from Kaua'i, I'd like to just summarize some pieces of this certificate. This is signed by the House Speaker, Scott Saiki, and Senate President Ron Hochi, and our legislative Kaua'i delegation, myself, Representative Dee Morikawa, and Representative James Tokioka. And basically, I just wanted to mention that this, the Go for Broke commemorative stamp proudly represents the Nisei soldiers' spirit of courage, service, and willingness to give their all in sacrifice for America, the rallying cry of "Go for Broke" would become the basis for teamwork which attributed to their victories on the battlefield. And whereas the Stamp Our Story initiative was launched in 2005 by 3 Nisei women, inspired by the Gambari spirit, the garnering support from as far away as France and endorsements from communities across the country to make the Go for Broke commemorative stamp possible. And whereas the unveiling event on Līhu'e Kauai will bring individuals and organizations together to honor the lasting influence of the Go for Broke generation. Now, therefore, the 31st legislature of the state of Hawaii hereby recognizes the momentous occasion of the unveiling of the Go for Broke Soldiers commemorative stamp.
Thank you, Jan and Representative Nakamura.
Thank you very much.
At this time, I would like to call upon our mayor of Kauai County, Derek Kawakami.
Kodomo no tame ni. In the early stages of the war, Nisei soldiers were not allowed to fight for their country, even though they were American citizens. Some were moved to internment camps along with their families because the government suspected them of being loyal to Japan rather than the United States. However, 20,000 Nisei answered the call of duty despite being seen as enemy aliens by their own country. When the war ended in 1945, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which had merged in 1944 with the 100th Infantry Battalion, became known as the most decorated unit of its size and length of service in U.S. military history. My grandfather, H.S. Kawakami, came from Fukuoka, Japan. And after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, he, like many other immigrants, wanted to prove their allegiance to the United States of America. And so, he knew that he was blind, but he memorized the eye chart. And he passed the first test to make his way to boot camp, where he ultimately was exposed as being blind, and he was sent back home. And for many years, he was very bitter that he didn't have the opportunity to prove his worth to the country that he loved so much. Fortunately for me, I have 2 family members that were able to serve. Uncle George Kawakami and Uncle Norman Hashisaka. Uncle Norman served in the MIS as somebody that was able to intercept communication from the enemy and be able to translate it back to American soldiers. And one thing that is profound is that through all of this, what I remember the most about what Uncle Norman saying, because they never talked about the war, was that through all of this, by now we should have learned that we should be looking for peace. Because in every war we send our best, our brightest, and our most talented. And that one day we hopefully will be able to see that peace that he seeks. He also spoke about, even after the war, he was recruited to be a part of the war crime trials, where some of the most horrible atrocities that many of us have heard about were being exposed. And it was a hard job for him, because he was the only Japanese American in the courtroom, and these Japanese families would come up to him seeking reprieve for their kids. And it must have been heartbreaking to think that at the end of the day, we are all just people. If it weren't for our Nisei veterans, I don't think someone like me could ever be mayor. When I was in college, I had a shave ice stand in front of LA Big Save. And one of my customers that came every day that I didn't really recognize because he was from California, sat down as he always did and started to talk story. And he told me that he was here to visit Pearl Harbor, that he had lived in Hawaii, that he had moved to California like many of those folks have done, and that he served in the 442. And he told me about family members that were put in internment camps. So I asked him, after all of that, why would you go and fight for a country that turned its back on you? And he looked at me like I was foolish, and he said, it's simple. Kodomo no tame ni, for the sake of the children. To all of those who have served, to the committee that put this together, to the United States Postal Service, thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Now we would like to welcome our World War II veteran of the Military Intelligence Service, Norman Hashisaka, who will accept the proclamation on behalf of all Go for Broke World War II veterans.
When I look back on history, this is a moment in time I will never forget. The day that I got to give Uncle Norman something because he gave us so very much. Whereas the U.S. Postal Service issued a new Forever stamp to honor America's Nisei Go for Broke soldiers on June 3rd, 2021, with the Hawaii unveiling on June 4th, 2021, and whereas despite our nation's executive order that insisted Japanese Americans be incarcerated in detention centers or internment camps, many Nisei men and women who wanted to prove their loyalty to our country patriotically served in the U.S. military during World War II, fighting for equality and justice at home and against the enemy overseas. And whereas intense war hysteria and prejudice faced by the Japanese American community and the contributions of the Nisei soldiers on the battlefield and after the war that eventually led to reparations in the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 left a lasting example for all of us to follow. And whereas the Stamp Our Story campaign, founded in 2005 by 3 Japanese American women from California, Fusa Takahashi, Aiko Kim, and the late Chiz Ohira, who unjustly endured incarceration in U.S. detention camps during World War II, were determined to tell the Go for Broke soldiers' story through a postage stamp. And whereas during that long 15-year period, the campaign gained momentum and support from community and government leaders, including bipartisan support across the country and from those as far away as France. Whereas there are Hawaii connections to the stamp, as the husband of Chiz Ohira was Hawaii resident Ted Ohira, a 100th 442 veteran from Makaweli, now known as Kawakami on Kauai, whereas the illustration of the soldier on the stamp is based on a photo of Shiroku Waidi Yamamoto, who was born in Ninole, a community on Hawaii Island, in 1923 and joined the anti-tank company of the 442nd Regiment. Whereas Nisei veterans, organizations, across Hawaii are joining together to celebrate this milestone and to make this stamp a source of pride for the AGA community and a symbol of the ongoing fight for equality and justice in our country. Now therefore, I, Derek S.K. Kawakami, Mayor, County of Kauai, do hereby proclaim today, June 4th, 2021, as Go for Broke Soldiers Stamp Day in the County of Kauai, and ask the people of the Aloha State to continue to perpetuate the legacy of the Nisei soldiers and honor their prominent role in World War II in Hawaii and American history. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, Norman Hashisaka would like to share a few thoughts and memories.
Can I start? Aloha and greetings to the United States Postal Service, State Representative Nakamura, Mayor Kawakami, the soldiers, the STEM committees, and the Daughters Group representatives and other honored guests. I am deeply honored to represent my fellow Niseis who served our great country during World War II. The heroics of the 100th and 442nd are legendary. Many from Kauai, including my wife, Kawakami Ohana, fought fiercely to liberate the lost battalion and others in France and Italy. Her brother Keiji Kawakami, brother-in-law Tsuka Murakami, her cousin George, and our longtime employee Ikito Muraoka were all in the 442nd. Her brother George Norito Kawakami served in both the European and Pacific Wars. Others from Kauai, such as notable attorney and founder of Kauai Realty, Clinton Shiraishi, was with the 522nd Field Artillery that helped to liberate the Nazi Dachau concentration camp. Women from Kauai, such as Chito Isonaga, served in the Women's Army Corps. Mayor Derek's grandfather, H.S. Kawakami, and I worked with the Military Intelligence Service. We trained in the cold of Minnesota. When serving in the Pacific, it was always a risk that we would be mistaken for the enemy. Our service was classified, and we were not to speak of our service for 50 years. General Charles Willoughby, head of the military intelligence, created a Nisei service, including secret missions, some in extremely hard jungle conditions, for shortening the war by 2 years and saving 1 million lives. Admiral Chester Nimitz viewed the Nisei soldiers' contributions as equivalent to a whole naval fleet. General Douglas MacArthur acknowledged the Nisei soldiers' work by saying that never before had the United States Army known so much about their enemy prior to actual engagement. In fact, it was a Nisei soldier who intercepted the information as to whereabouts of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. Isoroku Yamamoto was the mastermind behind bombing of Pearl Harbor. The U.S. Air Force used this information to track down and blew up his plane as he went out to review his forces. In occupied Japan, the MIS soldiers have also assisted with the war crimes trials and the rebuilding of Japan. While we served in numerous branches and capacities in both the Pacific and European wars, one thing we all had in common was the go for broke spirit and pride in serving our country, the United States of America. We did it for the love of our country and for those who came after us. You can and should be proud Americans. It is so important that our stories are remembered by future generations. I sincerely thank the United States Postal Service, the stamp committees, the Sons and Daughters organizations for remembering and honoring us. I humbly accept this forever stamp as on behalf of my fellow service members. Many have already passed on, but I know they will be very happy to receive this good honor. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge those soldiers from Kauai who gave ultimate sacrifice and could not return to their beloved Kauai. Please stand if you are able as we read a final oral call of our 62 killed in action as we gratefully accept our forever stamp. Thank you very much.
Hometown Kekaha, Hawaii. Private Larry Mitsuru Imamura. Private First Class Yoshio Ogamori. Private Sei A. Okuma.
Hometown Makaweli Kaua'i. Private First Class Bani Kiyoshi Choriki. Sergeant Katsumori Paul Iga. Private First Class Kenneth Goro Kashiwaera. Private First Class Masaichi Charles Katsura. Staff Sergeant Nobuo Kokame. Sergeant Matsutara Makishi. Private First Class Hirao Nakagawa. Private Tsutomo Nakano. Sergeant Jiro Tanaka.
Hometown Hanapepe and Ele Kauai. Private First Class Hideo Akiyama. Sergeant Daniel Den Betsui. Corporal George Fukumi Ishii. Private First Class Herbert Y. Kondo. Private Tetsuo Miyake. Private First Class Kyoto Mori. Private First Class Sadao Ogawa. Sergeant Shinichi Sugahara.
Hometown Talaheo and Lawai Kaua'i. Private Kaname Matsunaga, Private Tsuyoshi Miyoga, Staff Sergeant Shikichi Sato, Corporal James Koichi Uejo.
Hometown Koloa Kauai. Private First Class Henry Matsuzo Chibana. Private Onso Chinen. Second Lieutenant Tetsu Ted Ibata. Private Toshiaki Fujimoto. Private Yeiko Goya. Major John Anderson Johnson Jr. Private Larry H. Muronaka. Sergeant Thomas Tamotsu Tamashiro. Private First Class Masaru Tengen.
Hometown Puhi and Nawiliwili Kaua'i. Corporal Hisao Hashizume, Sergeant Jack Iso Miura, Private Takashi Suzuki.
Hometown Līhu'e and Hanamaulu Kauai. Private First Class Yutaka Fuji. Private Ichi Fukumura. Private First Class Satoru Hiraoka. Tech 4 Kazuyoshi Inoue. Sergeant Lawrence Hidan Masumura. Private First Class Iwao Morita. Staff Sergeant Richard Kano Murashige. Private First Class Kaoru Naito. Private Hihumi Seshiki.
Hometown Waipoli and Kapa'a Kaua'i. Staff Sergeant Sekichi Ganeko, Corporal Masao Iha, Private First Class Kanemai Ikimoto, Private First Class Thomas M. Ichaku, Sergeant Yoshio T. Minami, Tech Sergeant Chuji Saito, Private First Class Iwao Takimoto, Sergeant Howard Mitsuru Urabe, Staff Sergeant Gordon Kenchi Yamashiro, Private First Class Horaichi Yoshihara.
Hometown Anahola and Kealia Kauai. Private First Class Toshio Numa. Private Jiro Otsuka. Master Sergeant Daniel Masayoshi Wada.
Hometown Kahilikai and Hanalei Kaua'i. Private First Class Thomas Tokuyoshi Miyamoto, Sergeant Yoshimitsu Nakamura, Private First Class Albert Mitsuo Tsunada, Private First Class Tohoru Kakinaka.
Forever stand, forever remembered. Go for broke. God bless America.
And thank you for your brave service in our country, to our country. We're good? Okay. We have one last certificate of congratulations from the Kauai County Council. Unfortunately, due to prior commitments, Kauai County Chair, Council Chair, Aro Kaneshiro, and Vice Chair, Mason Chalk, are both unavailable today. However, we would still like to present a certificate of congratulations to the sons and daughters of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. I would like to introduce Joyce Sato, representing the 442nd Club, to accept this certificate on behalf of their organization. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Stamp Our Story Kauai Committee, we would like to once again thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We would also like to thank the people who donated items to make this event special. The sons and daughters of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team on Oahu, who donated your 442 mask. Jan Ishibashi, who donated the beautiful floral arrangements and the lathe. Representative Nadine Nakamura, who contributed in providing our bento lunches. And Marian Kubota and Carolyn Morinishi, who donated the maki sushi scrubbers. I would also like to recognize someone without whom this event would not have been possible. So thank you to Carolyn Morinishi, her energy and passion in putting this event together just made it happen. So, and I'd also like to give a quick shout out to our husbands, Ron and Curtis, because they volunteered to help us, of course, and then to Jan. Lastly, we'd like to thank Norman Hashisaka and his family, and all the Japanese American veterans of World War II for their distinguished service to our country, and congratulate them on the postage stamp designed in their honor. So again, thank you everyone for joining us, and please drive home safe.